This is great. Purple Mountain Majesty is above the fruited plain.
Let's call this meeting of the Gulfstream Town Commission to order. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Gainer.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White. Here. Commissioner Orthman. Here. Mayor Morgan.
Here.
Let the record show that Town Attorney Mr. Randolph is present, as is the Town Manager, Mr. Thrasher, and Police Chief, what is your name? Mr. Ward.
Well done. Minutes of the last meeting, March 13th, have been prepared. Any comments, changes, or corrections?
Just to start all of our meetings with a little humor, I'm suggesting that on page 2 of the ARPB, the word remolded be changed to remodeled. It sounds like somebody's putting mold in somebody's house. Shows how big this thing is.
Could be.
Yeah. No.
Good catch.
Yeah. Move approval of that.
Second. Read it.
Commissioner Gainer.
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner White. Yes. Commissioner Orthman. Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Any additions, withdrawals, rearrangements of agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 requests that I would like the commission to address under item 10, items for commission action. You want to put it at the end of that, or wherever you deem appropriate?
Yeah, well, why don't we make that, or we can just make it F10.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Public comments. Mr. O'Hare.
This is a photograph, Mr. Mayor.
Name and address.
This is a photograph of an item,
Just identify yourself.
or in addition to yours? Okay,
Yeah.
my name is Chris O'Hare. This is a photograph of an item found in town, like a lot of other items. It's over 4 feet above the ground. It illustrates a subject matter that's trying to communicate something to the public by the artist. It's mounted to a building. I just need clarification on the code. Is this an object they are?
As you know, this is not a question and answer period. We don't entertain questions from the public during public comment. If you'd like to set up a meeting with staff or our attorney, we'd be happy to meet with you to go over your questions.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Except that I did ask the town manager, he won't tell me. And there's no other opportunity for me to get a meeting, unless you're saying that you will meet with me and give me an answer to that question.
I'm not staff, but if you want to continue this colloquy, we can, or you can make your comments with the remaining 3 minutes that you have.
Well, my comment is, when you create a code, it's subject to criminal enforcement. If someone violates the code, it's a criminal act, subject to code enforcement action, subject to circuit court action. You need to know if you're going to violate the code ahead of time so you can avoid violating the code. I'm simply asking, is this an object they are? It's in the code. I can't get a definition from Mr. Thrasher. It seems like a reasonable request, considering that you do answer questions of other people when they come up to the podium and ask a question of the commission. But if you choose not to answer it, I understand.
Yeah, I think our sign ordinance has been debated, discussed, questions have been asked and answered during the passing of that ordinance, and it speaks for itself, Mr. O'Hare.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm not asking about the sign ordinance. This is an object they are. Prohibited
No, I
from
think
being
you are.
visible
I
from
think
the
you are.
street.
You've been sending emails. You've been, in fact, you just sent some this week, as I recall, because I got some of them, questioning these very items.
I'm just asking if it's an object they are, that's all, sir.
Well, then, read the ordinance, and if you can't understand it, make an appointment with Mr. Thrasher, and if you're not satisfied, I'm sure that Mr. Randolph would be happy to speak with you. Those are your options, sir.
Very well, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mayor, you sent a letter to residents throughout the town claiming that the $122 million increase in the town's taxable value was due to tight zoning rules. And yet, the records of the property appraiser show that the property at 4001 North Ocean, which just came online, is valued at $110 million. I just don't see the connection between people buying a condo on the beach and the success of your tight zoning regulations. Just a comment. You go on to say, not unexpectedly, Christopher O'Hare has used the language of the new sign ordinance, which evidently he doesn't understand, to file complaints against many residents and demands that they remove those violations. I have a copy of my letter. It's typical of all the letters. It says, "Dear Mr. Thrasher," attaches a recent photo of an apparent violation of a town code as seen from the street. I personally have no objection to the item shown in the attached photo. In fact, I think it attractive and the property owner has the right to display it. But I understand it violates the town code, and therefore, since all residents are entitled to be treated equally, I ask you to please investigate this complaint. I never demanded anybody remove any sign, sir. And I don't think in the history of the state, a mayor has gone to a residence without being asked and just said, "Oh, by the way, that guy complained about your house," and demanded you remove things. Unbelievable. Mr. Ganger went to a lot of trouble to go to the Government Operations Subcommittee to testify on behalf of modification of the records law. He said, we're 100% residential. That's not true. There are 2 commercial lots in Gulf Street. You might not be aware of it, but I have the record here from the property appraiser if you'd like to see it sometime. He said legal expenses have depleted our hurricane reserves. Now, I was at a meeting where we wanted the county to pay for a park. And Mary, what the heck's her name? The one that ended up in jail. Mary McCarty came to the meeting and said, "We can't give you the money for a park, because then we won't be able to support all the women, the abused women and the orphan children." This is the very same thing. You're saying that because you spent money on records, you can't afford a hurricane? When money is shifted around all the time? He goes on to say, it's forced.
Mr. O'Hare, time's up. Thank you very much. Anyone else care to speak?
Save this for later.
Ms. Randolph.
My name is Patsy Randolph. I haven't prepared anything, but I just want people to realize that just over a year ago, these guys were elected, and we need to applaud and thank them for this incredible work they've done for us. You've just really done, well, first of all, you didn't get a honeymoon, which you should have got. And you have worked through some very grueling, difficult times, and we are very, very appreciative, and we're very proud of how you've led us, so thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, let's move to the public hearing itself. Have there been any ex parte communications by commissioners relative to any application?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to step down on the first item to handle various real estate matters for the applicant, although unrelated to the specific application.
It's on 3232 North Ocean.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Stanley has stepped down. Who will be presenting for 3232 North Ocean Boulevard? This will be.
You need to swear in.
Yes,
you did.
we need those. Anyone that cares to speak at any time during this public hearing, please stand to be sworn. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning, Bill Weisman. watching 3232 North Ocean. We are proposing to add a second floor addition over the top of the garage at the back of the property. Is the Gulfstream Road side. We chose that area as it was the only area that was really left to develop, but also because it enabled us to add a second floor without impacting the volume of the house significantly, because as you can see from this drawing, the existing house is approximately 3 feet above grade, the garage is down at a lower level, and by adding the second floor above the garage and lowering the plate height of the second floor down to about 6.5 feet, we brought the height of the house down. And also, the second floor addition is approximately 80 feet from the neighbor to the south. The windows face towards Gulfstream Road at this angle. There's a hedge along this property that is, the height of the hedge is actually higher than the top of my windows from the second floor. And then the neighbor to the north, there's a hedge also in this area, but we're mitigating any kind of impact they will have by the addition of these 6 Montgomery palms on the inside of the auto court. I don't, it's straightforward. Do you have any questions for me on this?
Bill, the record showed that the person to the north was apparently satisfied with your solution and did not attend the ARPB meeting. Do we know for a fact that was satisfaction was indicated, or just didn't come to the meeting?
Didn't come to the meeting. The owner, Stellfield, spoke with her before the meeting. I assume that she was satisfied. She didn't come to the meeting.
Okay. And what about, it was my understanding that people who live on the other side of the road on Gulfstream Road, did they make any comment?
No, no one came.
Okay. So for all intents and purposes, we're satisfied, the neighbors are comfortable as best they can, I'm sure.
Well, there were no neighbors present at that meeting. I don't know if there are neighbors present at this
Okay.
meeting or not.
Okay.
Were there any complaints made?
No.
The elevation suggests that the addition seems to have a higher roof line than the rest of the house, but I think you were at least referring to that in your presentation.
What's the second floor? The rest of the house is one story.
Okay, just explain to me what, I just want to make sure that it is a consistent look, that we try to de-emphasize garage structure relative to the rest of the house. And it looks like it fits, but I have trouble envisioning roof heights relative to the remainder of the house.
Right, well, you can see if you look at the site plan, you can see the roof plane from the rest of the house. The roof plane from the rest of the house is much more massive than the garage. The roof heights do go, higher from the first floor than what they would have been on the garage itself. And you can see this is the height of the roof with the existing house at this location right here, and approximately 6 to 8 feet taller. That's 6 feet here, 8 feet taller here is the addition. And again, the addition is in over the top of the garage, which is 3 feet lower than the existing house. And we de-emphasize the height of the second floor by bringing the plate height, which is the edge of the house, down below to the 6.5 feet level. So the ceilings are sloping inside the house, because we didn't want the house to stick up any higher than it had to stick up. And the windows, the dormer windows, higher. And it's inconsistent with the rest of the design of the house.
When you remodeled the existing, the main house, was it substantially different on the exterior than it is now, or I can't remember.
We painted it.
You just painted it, okay, so to all intents and purposes, it looks like it looked before, and this looks like it looked. And
Correct, it's the
therefore,
same
it's
style.
Really the same style.
The same components.
I agree with the mayor, it's a question I think a lot of people have on their minds, but it sounds to me like you answered the question. house, by the way.
Actually, it looks better now than it ever has.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
I mean, it's
Gorgeous
beautiful.
house.
Any other questions, Mr. Weeds? Any other comments you'd like to make? Is there a motion?
Thank you.
The application. Sorry, I didn't see any hands. Any public comments? No? Yes, Mr. O'Hare?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I think that's a great design. I hope you approve it without any further delay, since it seems to satisfy all the written regulations of the code. I just need clarification on this presentation. I did try to contact Mr. Thrasher and get a clarification on the sign ordinance. As you suggested, we had an email discussion. Mr. Thrasher said these illustrations are only used demonstratively within the commission chambers to assist in a presentation. Therefore, they're not signs. I asked for a little more clarification. He said,
I'm sorry, are you commenting on
these comments
this
are about this
application?
application, sir.
Is the sign ordinance part of this application?
This object, sir, is subject, I believe, to the sign ordinance, and I'm asking about this application. May I
You believe the
speak to
house
it?
is subject to the sign ordinance?
The subject is this application, sir.
Continue.
Thank you.
See where you're going.
Mr. Thrasher tried to further clarify this type of object, saying they were used internally and couldn't be seen from the street, therefore not a sign. But the code says visible to the public, the attention of the public. I'm the public, so are these people. This is visible to the public, and I just want clarification on this application because, like I said before, the code is criminally enforceable. Is this exempt from the code because it's not visible to the public?
Thank you for that observation, Mr. O'Hare. Anything else?
Yes, is there a landscape portion to this approval? I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Is there a landscape portion to this approval?
I think Mr. Weisman talked about the palms, but if there's something you didn't understand about it, he'll address it.
I was just wondering if there was a landscape portion to today's approval, because I didn't see it here on the illustrations that look like signs.
Yeah, we received this.
I'm
I'll have
sorry.
Mr. Weisman address it for you.
I'm sorry?
I'll have Mr. Weisman address it for you. Okay?
Do you have a landscape? May I examine the landscape portion, please, if it's going to be part of the approval? Pardon me for turning my back. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the special exception for the additions, a total of 1,283.6 square feet to the existing non-conforming single-family dwelling.
Second.
Read.
Commissioner Ganger?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morton?
Yes.
The level 3 architectural site plan review for the additions of the second-story living space, 1,211.6 square feet above the existing garage and 72 square feet on the first floor between the house and the garage. I move to approve.
Second.
Read it.
Commissioner Ganger?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morton?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Seaside Builders. This is actually two applications, 3424 North Ocean and 3410 North Ocean. I think these should be considered together and be presented together. So, Mr. Jones, you're going to be presenting on behalf of Seaside?
Yes.
Okay.
morning, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. My name is Richard Jones with Richard Jones Architecture. I am happy to be presenting these two homes for your review. 3424 North Ocean and 3410 North Ocean. I'm joined by our landscape architect, Dave Bodker. The owner and developer, Mr. Downey, should be here shortly. And Mr. Morgan, would you like me to just go through this PowerPoint and then proceed to the
Yes.
next one before questions?
Please.
Okay. 3424 North Ocean, City Commission meeting. Here is an aerial of the two properties. They are just north of Lakeview Drive on North Ocean Boulevard. We have 3424 to the north and 3410 to the south. To the west, they abut the Oleander Way, which is a one-way street. Here is a copy of the existing survey of the properties. 3424 to the north, and we'll get to 3410 to the south. There currently is one home straddling both properties. That home currently faces Oleander, with the back of the home facing North Ocean, and the rear of the home being quite visible from North Ocean.
Richard, could you just, with that, kind of guess at where the footprint of the current home is on your map?
Here is the current home, Mr. Yanger, the outline of the house right here. And it's got a little attachment here, and I believe this is the garage over on this lot. And it's got a circular drive here, and I believe this is a pool and a deck on the rear of the home that faces North Ocean.
And how many square feet is the current home?
Well, I don't have that exact answer, but looking at it graphically, I would say that that home is at least 5,000 square feet gross, including the garage and the home itself.
Thank you.
This is a copy of the site plan for 3424, and what you'll notice is we are actually designing a house that has two front elevations. The main elevation, the main front elevation is addressing North Ocean. Again, the primary north-south way through Gulfstream, along very historic drive with the Australian pines. And so rather than the back of an existing house being highly visible, we're turning this house around and putting our best facade facing North Ocean. At the same time, we realize we have neighbors to the west that we want to be compatible to, and so we are designing this facade to be a front facade as well. And essentially, with the arrangement of the house, we create a courtyard. And inside the courtyard, we have a pool, we have some loggia sitting areas, we have an outdoor fireplace, barbecue areas, and we have a detached one-story guest retreat here, completing the courtyard, and an entry gate here as well, that when we get to the elevations, you'll see gives the appearance of a front door. So again, breaking apart the massing of the house to break down the overall mass, being more compatible with Oleander, having the one-story portions here, and then more of the massing up on North Ocean, addressing the primary thoroughfare. This is the colored landscape plan. Again, you can see the generous landscaping around the perimeter. You see the drives coming in both directions and the courtyard in the center. There are several existing trees, I'm sorry, let me clarify that. There are some existing trees that are going to remain, and some of these items have been discussed at the ARPB, and there were some concessions made, some trees added to address a few of the neighbors' concerns. There is an architectural feature out in front along North Ocean, a wall with some decorative railing that will complement the architecture of the house.
Did I read that incorrectly, that looked like the wall to the, on the right there is slightly lower than the wall to the left? Is that a natural slope, or?
This here,
Yeah, it looked like one was a foot lower than the other.
no, they're both the same height.
They are the same.
From this angle, it looks like they're the same height. Maybe from the angle that you're viewing it, it might appear a little bit lower, but those are the same height. And that's a little garden wall that runs along the front here along North Ocean, and will be heavily landscaped as well. This is our data calculations showing a classic Gulfstream Bermuda style with the appropriate setbacks and the appropriate square footages and FAR within the town's LDRs. Our floor plan, center entry, living dining, great room to the side, master down, two-car garage, and of course the detached guest retreat over here on the southwest corner. Minimal second floor, and I guess this pretty much gives you an accurate depiction of just how much of this house is one story versus this minimal portion over here that is two-story. I believe it's roughly about 20 or 25% of the total square footage only is on the second floor for a few bedrooms. And then our two-dimensional elevations, again facing North Ocean, classical symmetry, gabled end roofs, in a Gulfstream Bermuda style. And then this is our elevation to the west facing Oleander. Again, the appearance of a front elevation with a nice centrally located entry gate and arbor, two symmetrical flanking wings with side gates and lower eave heights and complementary detailing. Side elevations, there was Mr. Kent from ARPB had requested that this portion, this 15-foot portion here, that's the only two-story area of the house that's double stacked. He asked for that eave height to be brought down to 22 feet. The developer gladly obliged, and Mr. Kent and the ARPB were satisfied with that concession. And then the rendering, Gulfstream Bermuda style, symmetrical masonry structure, smooth stucco, crown molding under the eaves, a classic white on white color palette with gable accents, louvered shutters, classical balcony railing, X railing, second floor step-ins, and the majority of the square footage on the first floor, shutters in a deep navy blue. Thank you. And if I can move on to the next one for you. Would you like to hear anything about the landscape plan on this one first? Before we
No,
move
I
on to the next one?
think we should move to the house, and I'll be quite honest with you, Mr. Jones. What I'm looking at is section 66-144 of our code, which prohibits homes that are too similar being within 250 feet of each other. That's why I think we need to address
Okay, sure.
the two homes before we
Absolutely.
get into landscaping.
Okay, 3410. Gulfstream City Commission 410. And we'll go through this home. Again, colonial West Indies style. These are the two lots that you saw from the last application. 3410 is to the south. Again, the south lot, 3410. This is our site plan. We have, again, in a similar fashion, addressed both Oleander and North Ocean with two front facades, one facing North Ocean, the primary facade, and one facing Oleander, the two-story portion. here with a single structure, detached garage and garden wall. This is the landscape plan, again, central drive to the home. We have a two-story, it is actually attached with a long breezeway and pavilion facing west. And we have a carriage home up on the second floor of this home. We have a courtyard as well, in a different configuration from the previous one that you saw. And then we have an outdoor fireplace as well in a different configuration than the previous one, and part of the main facade facing Oleander. Here is our data table, where roughly 500 or so square feet less than the previous house, similar setbacks, and we have a colonial West Indian style. Here's the floor plan. We have an office at the front entry, master down, pavilion to the rear with a long covered breezeway and connection to the loggia, outdoor fireplace here on the garden wall, and the two-car garage to the south. On this house, you can see again, a generous portion of the house is one story, not as much as the previous design. There's more on this house, more two-story area on this house. And again, there's the carriage home to the west. These are our elevations, as you note on Oleander. The previous house where we had a center gate and two one-story wings on either side. On this one, we have a pavilion attached to a garden wall. We have a decorative fireplace, that's part of the elevation, and a two-story massing of the garage and carriage home above. On the front elevation, we have a center entry flanked by two symmetrical balconies. This house has a gray flat tile roof versus the previous house that's white flat tile. This house has second floor lap siding and has a louvered balcony railing, which is distinct versus the all stucco and Chippendale railing of the previous house. And this one also has Boston hips, if you will, as a decorative feature. And there's also a balcony added to the west on Oleander. Side elevations, if you will. You can see the massing. This is the two-story portion of the detached, or the semi-detached, if you will, carriage home. Again, Mr. Kent asked that this eave height be brought down to 21 feet, I believe, which the developer agreed to. There was also some landscape concessions with this one as well for the neighbors, and they were agreed to as well. And then we have this elevation, colonial West Indies, a symmetrical structure. We have smooth stucco on this one. We have siding on the second floor, hip and hip gable or Boston hip roof treatments versus the gable ends on the previous. We have shaker panel shutters on this house, where the previous had louvered shutters. We have chimney accents on the front of this house, where the previous did not. We have louvered balcony railings and dual balconies splitting on either side of the entry on this house for distinct massing. The previous house had one central balcony above the front door with more of a Chippendale railing, again all stucco, white on white. This color palette is white with blue siding, dark gray roof, and all light gray trim shutters and railings. This house does have second floor step-ins as well, but it also offers extensive wood detailing, including arbors on the sides above the gates, brackets, columns, pergola, on the back, exposed rafter tails under the eaves where the previous house had crown molding, to be more distinct to that style of architecture. And again, as I mentioned before, the dark gray tile roof. So again, a British colonial West Indies, complete with all the detailings and massing, symmetrical massing that is consistent with this style of architecture. And that opposed to the white-on-white gable end massing, symmetrical massing of the previous architecture, which is classic Gulfstream Bermuda, and the associated details with that, again, differing from this elevation. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Could you, thank you for moving swiftly through it, and my brain only works at a certain speed, but the siding on this house is what material?
The siding is done out of stucco, and it's very consistent with the Lot 5 Harbor View home
That's what I
that we
thought
did
you were
the
gonna say,
siding
yeah.
on the stucco.
And
when we look-
how true is the blue that you're showing in this illustration? It looks like sky blue because what is the?
It's like a light powder blue. I believe we provided the color
I'm
samples.
sure you did.
And again, with this style of architecture and the dark gray roof, again, we look at Lot 5 at Harbor View for consistency as far as architectural style. And the house next door to this at 3424, we look for consistency to 1275 North Ocean, which has just been completed, which is a Bermuda Gulfstream, classical Bermuda style. Both of those homes employ perfect symmetry on the front facades. Both of those homes are across the street from each other. And yet both of those homes are clearly distinct in their appearance to the street, primarily because of the detailing and the colors and the variation between them. So we feel that the houses are both unique in of themselves, both in how the plan lays out, how they address their courtyards, and most importantly, the detailing in the colors.
In that recessed area in the middle, is there a window behind it, or what if I were at a better angle?
This area in the middle is a window up above, and this is an arched kind of entry feature with a recessed door. And again, over here we have the split balconies with French doors coming out from those front bedrooms with the heavy brackets.
Are those functional balconies?
Yes, they are.
Mr. Jones, I alluded to it earlier. It's really why I wanted the two items presented themselves, because when I look at it, I appreciate what you do. You work very hard, you come up with good designs, you present very eloquently, but we have a code that prohibits excessive similarity of homes next to each other. And when I look at these homes, I see two courtyard homes, two-story massing along A1A. And if you look at the inside, even the placement of the bedrooms upstairs and the dining and the gate room and the covered loges are all the same. The size is about the same. And when you strip away some of the decorative items, you essentially have two forward-facing fascia that are almost identical along A1A. And I think that this detracts from the neighborhood district in which these lie. I don't think they can stand. One can, one cannot, in my opinion, under our code. I see way too much similarity if we take away the balconies, just looking at this front portion.
But
We
you
have the
wouldn't
central
take away
door.
the balconies, Mr.
Two windows either side, two windows above.
You have to realize, possibly inside the house, you might feel a little similarity in plan, but you can't take away the balconies. They're part of the facade. They're part of the front-facing elevation of this house.
Oh, I wouldn't want to take them away.
Yeah,
I'm just
and-
saying that when you remove them, You're
But-
essentially looking at
But
a house that's
we're
almost
reviewing
identical.
both of these houses with the balconies in place. We're reviewing both of these houses as they appear to the street. And yes, they have symmetry, which is a classical architectural style. We pride ourselves on trying to make our houses as symmetrical as possible, because there's an inherent beauty in symmetry. And yet, when you look at both of these houses side by side, and you look at them from a standpoint of the detailing, and you look at them from a standpoint of the neighborhood and driving past them, a house that has different massing with regards to balconies, different roof shapes, different roof ornamental features, different siding materials, different shutters, different balcony railings, different roof color, different building color. These are all things that are part of this application that distinguish one house from the next. So you can't just say, if we stripped all of this down, what do we have? We have to say, let's look at these houses side by side and how they will look when they're built to the street, and that's what you're reviewing this application.
Those are legitimate points. I'm looking at your courtyard description right there.
Yeah.
They look very, very similar to me.
The
And if we were to
courtyards,
put these two homes right next to each other, I can see them, the public can't.
yeah, the
You will
two,
see tremendous similarities. If you look in the inside of these two homes, you will see remarkable similarities. I look at the pallets down below, they're almost identical. And what I'm telling you is, we have a code that was designed for a purpose to preserve the integrity of our neighborhood districts. And yes, you can create distinctions, and you've been very good at that, and that may be sufficient for this commission. But for me, I think these homes are too similar and will upset the balance of the core district neighborhood.
okay. And if I just may, and then I'll introduce Mr. Ladowny. Yes, they both do have courtyards, but the courtyards are different. The elevations, the front elevations facing Oleander are completely different. We have one with two one-story elements with a central gate. We have one with only one structure on the rear that's two-story with a pavilion and a breezeway attachment, and a rear fireplace that's part of the facade. The courtyards themselves, they are two courtyard homes, but the courtyards are laid out differently. The pools are different, the fountain locations, the fireplaces are different, and the detailing, just as important as the detailing on the front facade, the detailing in the courtyards are different. The Bermuda-style homes has Doric columns, classical Doric columns. The West Indies home has wood-wrapped columns. It has the two-story carriage home with the arbor, and again, all the detailing that's on the front of the house that's different is consistent in the courtyards and to Oleander. When you're inside the house, they're going to be two different. One's going to be a more contemporary design, one's going to be more traditional design, so the finishes are all going to be different. Yes, a kitchen might be in a similar location to another kitchen. But again, to the person walking or strolling along Oleander with two completely independent facades, to a person driving down or walking down A1A with two facades of different massing and different colors and different architectural style and different roof color, there is clear distinguishment between the two designs. And so I disagree with your feelings. I can understand them, I accept them, but I think we have done a tremendous job of presenting two unique houses for the community. And yes, they share some similarities because everything that Mr. Ladowny does has a certain style that goes through all of the houses that we do for him and all of the houses that he does with other architects. There's a certain style that he portrays. These just happen to be coming before you side by side at the same time. And so maybe there's a little bit more scrutiny on looking at them together. But they should be given the same consideration as a Harborview house across the street from 1275, where there's symmetrical treatments and different types of architectural style, yet plans are somewhat similar. Thank you.
I would agree you are different on Oleander. On A1A, I think any reasonable person driving down the road is going to see a central door, single door, with two massive, straight up, 4-window projections. Then it juts back, goes out again for the remainder of that house. that on the one side you have the same sloping angle. These houses look very, very similar. Are they identical? Of course not.
Yeah,
Very
they,
similar.
again, one thing that we didn't mention is, this house has a classic pitch break roof. See how the roof comes in at a shallow angle and then approaches back up? Versus the previous house, which just had a standard hip roof. And that was one item that distinguishes them as well that I did not mention before. But yes, they share some symmetrical elements as far as the massing. But again, when you break it down detail by detail of each house, I believe it was Mies van der Rohe who said, God is in the details. Breaking it down detail by detail. Each detail, louvered balcony, louvered shutters versus shaker clapboard shutters. Bahama shutters on one, not on the other. Louvered railings on one, Chippendale railing. Different roof shapes. Roof ornamentation on one and not on the other. Different wing walls, different gates, different, pretty much different everything, except for some similarities in the floor plan. So I'll turn it over to Mr.
Yeah, they are
Ladani.
very persistent, and I appreciate all the insights you've
I
given
wanted
us.
to get it
I have
all
to tell
in.
you, in
Thank you very
my
much for the
opinion,
time.
I think it's in violation of 66-144, and I think you need to pick one of the houses. That's just my opinion. You may convince.
Can I be sworn in?
Have you been sworn in yet, Mr.
No.
Levine?
No.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Hi, Tom Ladani, thanks for letting me speak. Sorry for being late. Seems like I'm always late. Mr. Morgan, before we get into the code, in terms of your interpretation of the code, I just want to talk a little bit about the process. We went before the ARPB board last month, and we had 2 hours of deliberation, if you will, from a design standpoint, and we ended up receiving a 5-0 unanimous recommendation from them moving these 2 projects forward to the commission. I'm just curious, from a standpoint of the code interpretation, number one, why would the ARPB give us a 5-0 vote of support from a design standpoint, because that's really what that board is here to do, and then come before this board and have, at least in your opinion, significant resistance to the code, number one. Number two, you spoke extensively about, and I can appreciate your position, you spoke extensively about the courtyards. Maybe the city attorney can answer this, but does the code address courtyards? You can't have similar courtyards and houses next to each other from 250 feet away from each other?
No,
You
the
focused on the courtyards quite a bit. What is the concern about the courtyards that no one sees?
No, the courtyard is an unusual architectural design in Gulfstream, so to have 2 of them right next to each other is a striking similarity, in my opinion. And our code says, proposed structures shall not be excessively similar to any other structure existing or for which a permit has been issued within 250 feet in respect to one or more of the following features of exterior design and appearance. 1, apparently visible identical front and side elevations, substantially identical size and arrangement of either doors, windows, porticos, other openings or breaks in the elevation facing the street, including reverse arrangements, or any other significant identical features of design, such as but not limited to materials, roof line, height, other design elements of which a courtyard would be one. That is our
It
code.
doesn't, but that was an interpretation. It doesn't specifically refer to courtyards.
That's correct.
Good, that's an interpretation.
That's-
So I just wanted to leave, for the record, I just wanted that to be.
That's correct. And Mr. Jones could persuade the commission that these 2 are not excessively similar.
I could agree with you, and, we've got a history in this town, and I'd like to think that we've done a good job with what we've done at the Spence property, with all those properties are sold. We just completed that house on North Ocean Boulevard. We came before you on 3140 and 3180 Polo, and I agreed to not merge those properties willingly with restrictions as such. So I'm here to cooperate as best I can with the community, so I want to say that. I'm not here to be argumentative. And I appreciate the support that I've gotten from the board in the past. I guess my question, if we're talking about the front elevations of these buildings, I think that on Oleander, there's a distinct difference in the real elevations of these properties. I think it's very attractive, quite honestly, in terms of the two different garages where we've split. One house has a single story guest suite, the other one has a stack on top, and they're different. I think that the Oleander elevation looks good. Setting aside the courtyard issue for a moment, because I disagree respectfully with that one. If we're talking about the front elevations, what, if I were to guess, you probably like the classic Bermudian elevation better than this one.
It's not a question of one or two items, Mr. Waldon.
No, I understand, but.
It is the similarity, the massing of the front elevation.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Plus
What
the
would you
courtyard
want to see?
similarity.
What would you want to see different on one of the elevations in front?
It's not my position to suggest what you should do. I just believe that you, in my opinion, you could have one of these houses, the other would have to be very different. And that's just my opinion. I don't want to dominate the time here because there are other commissioners who may feel differently.
But I also,
unanimously in favor.
but I also, you know, when you say you want it to be different, you would wish it to be different. Different in what way? They are different. Now we get into a definition of what different means, and then I could come back or revise one of the, I'm not suggesting.
Well,
to
to
do
be
that.
quite honest, my interpretation of the code, as you know, varies significantly from yours. You and I have discussed this at length. The core district of the town of Gulfstream has a major emphasis on single-family homes. It specifies there should only be few two-story homes. That's another reason for my objection to this, because you have two right next to each other that are so similar. There is a characteristic to each of our 5 neighborhood districts in Gulfstream. And I believe that the next house, one of these is sufficient. The other one has to be very different. I would prefer a single level
Well,
home.
what you're getting at is what you're saying, now what you just said.
I can't require you to do that.
I understand it, but I'm just trying to understand, Mr. Morgan, for the record. What you just said was that you would prefer to see, based on your interpretation of the code, that one of these homes be 2-story, if it is 2-story, and the other one be a single story. That's what you're saying.
If you were asking me to do it,
That's what
if you
you're
were
saying.
asking me to do it, I would say put one home, as has been there for 50 years, on that lot. But that's not realistic. You have your 2 plats, and you're gonna put 2 homes on it.
Right.
So with that being the case, and you've got 2 small lots,
Right.
I think 2 homes facing A1A with 2-story presentations is objectionable to our code. How you get around that and how you reduce it, it's not my task to tell you.
Mr. Morgan, if I can, going back to the courtyards you had mentioned, the reason both houses have courtyards is because of the theory behind the design of 2 front elevations. You have an oleander front that you're trying to address for the neighbors, and you have a North Ocean front. And when you're addressing 2 front elevations, you're pulling the mass of the house apart. We're pulling it apart. We're moving parts of the house around on the site. 2-car garage over here, 1-car garage over there, loggia over here, not over there. And we're arranging the house on the lots in order to address 2 front elevations. And what we're left with is a courtyard in the middle. So it is, again, the same architectural solution to both lots to create a courtyard when you're addressing 2 front elevations. Now, we chose to face them both towards North Ocean because we feel that is the primary elevation. Certainly one house could face, this elevation could face Oleander, and then you can have a 2-car garage carriage home possibly facing North Ocean. Architecturally, I don't think that's the best solution for these 2 lots. I believe, because certainly if this house had this facade facing west, which you could very easily do, and we have the Oleander facade facing east, well then you would have, what you're looking for is 2 completely different massings. And then we wouldn't really be having this discussion.
No, the discussion is because these are spec homes. This is a development.
No, I understand that, but what
Maximizing
solution?
profit on a lot, which he's fully entitled to do. However, that lends itself to certain architectural designs, as you have enumerated. The point is, if an individual were putting a house there and complying with the code, you would have 2 totally different homes, probably a single story and a single story, frankly, on the size of these lots. But to the extent you can put a 2-story on it, you're somewhat limited to it. That's up to you as the architect.
Right.
But to just say, okay, for my spec homes, I'm gonna put 2 identical courtyards with front massing on A1A, because that's the best use of the property, that's fine for profit,
Okay.
it is not for the code.
Okay, that's fine, and again, for the record, they're not 2 identical courtyards, we can go through each detail of the courtyards if you like. Again, one of these homes, if one of these homes were to flip, like I said, if we took this home, and we turned it this way, and now to the right is North Ocean, and to the left is Oleander. The home would still fit on the lot,
Yeah.
yet it would completely eliminate your concern of having the 2 facades next to each other.
Except that you cannot have reverse arrangements with the same similarities pursuant to the code.
If that's,
I mean, if you're trying to be clever and just saying flipping it so that I put the mass on this side and this mass on the forward side, I don't see that argument. Okay?
Mr. Morgan, and I don't want to take up too much more time of yours, but you mentioned this is not an issue, the design criteria is not an issue of profitability. I've got 2 lots, 2 private lots that I have the right to build 2 houses on. The profitability is not an issue here. We're talking about, how much profit is made on these houses is a function of whether or not they sell or not for a certain price. We could have a recession next week and it could be a loss. I mean, that's profitability isn't the issue. Good design is the issue. Also, we're facing these houses on North Ocean Boulevard across from 2-story homes, although they're on the.
Well, on the ocean, you mean?
They're still in a corridor of North Ocean Boulevard, where you've
They're
got
not.
you've got 2-story facades across the street. You're looking right at 2-story houses. So I don't think that from a neighborhood compatibility and consistency standpoint, we're not on Polo Drive, we're on North Ocean Boulevard. I think that is somewhat of a consideration as well. But again, I'm not hearing, you're saying it's up to us to come back with something different. I mean, different in terms of what? I got a 5-0 recommendation.
I have some suggestions, and I appreciate the mayor's dialogue as well, but I would like if the commission agrees to hear from the residents. I think some are here on Oleander. I live on Oleander, but on the other end. But I think we'll come back. I have a couple of possibly moderate suggestions, but I don't think it'll rise to the level of one one-story home and 1 2-story home, but,
Thank you.
and then we can maybe circle back to this
All right,
after we
thank
get
you, that's
some
fine.
comments from the neighbors if
All
the
right.
mayor agrees.
No, that's fine, because I agree, we don't want to dominate the conversation here. Members of the public like to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Point of order, Chairman, would you like to swear her in?
I believe she was sworn in, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I apologize.
I actually was not sworn in because I didn't know I was going to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were, there were a number of people that stood up. Thank you.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Would you state your name?
My name is Nancy Wigglesman, and first, as a resident of Gulfstream who frequently walks on A1A and throughout the neighborhood, and second, as a third-generation developer, if these 2 houses are beside each other, to me, it will greatly cheapen the town of Gulfstream. It will make that area look, as the Spence property does, like we're entering a planned commercial development, an upscale tract. To me, Gulfstream has always been an area where we have had individual homes that were done by separate architects that meet the code but have a very special feeling. And they do not feel as though you're entering something that was designed for mass appeal rather than for individuals. So one person very much would appreciate it if you would please vote against having these 2 houses next to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And by the way, if you haven't been sworn in, when you stand up, please tell us.
Thank you. I'm John White, and I live at 101 Lakeview Drive, excuse me, which is just west of the south property that the gentleman introduced today. And frankly, I wasn't even aware that these properties were going to be built. So maybe it's my problem. But in any case, as I I did look into it, I recognized that the one property with the two-story garage property on top of it is right behind me and absolutely overlooks my entire backyard. And I thought, you know, when I moved to Gulfstream 5 years ago, I did so for many reasons, but one of them was the style of the township, the culture of the township, the privacy, the uniqueness, security. I mean, there are many reasons why you move. And when I thought about what was going to be built, and I didn't know anything about it till I came today and listened to the gentleman talk about the commercial aspects of what they're doing, it seems so different than the culture of the township. I mean, obviously trying to maximize value of a piece of land is important to them, and I can appreciate that from the business perspective. But if you all were sitting in my backyard and came and looked at what's going to be right behind me, and Olean is a very small street, you would say, my goodness, they're going to even have a balcony overseeing it. So, I mean, I'm very, very disheartened that wouldn't have been recognized, first of all, and second of all, just from a, I don't know, from a practical standpoint of what we're trying to accomplish here, it just doesn't seem right to me. And so, you know, I just wanted to know that what was the opinion on that when they looked at the grading, and you know, the grading so much higher behind me. And of course, with a one-story home there, you see this, it doesn't matter, right? Because the home is set back and it's, you know, it's total privacy. So I'm going to go from total privacy to actually, absolutely, it's right on Olean, it's right overlooking my my property.
Well, thank you, Mr.
We don't have anything this morning.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please give your name.
My name is Barbara Sloan. I just want to let the commission know my feelings about what's happening to our town is very sad. These gigantic houses being built on small lots, right up to the lot lines. The two-story, it's not that that's not attractive. It's just that it's too massive for our tiny little town. And I feel so sorry for this gentleman who is going to have somebody overlooking his whole life in his backyard. I mean, it's just, it's really, really sad. And I hope that something can be done to be able to change the code to prevent similar houses, as you say, Mayor Morgan, from being built all over town, and to limit the number of two-story houses and the size of houses on lots. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yes, sir.
I have been sworn. Tony Graziano, 3259 Polo Drive. I'd like to second the comments of Ms. Sloan. When we moved here 4 or 5 years ago, the town was dominated by single-story homes, 2,500 to perhaps 4,000 square feet, with a couple of two-story homes. It seems to me, in all the time we've been living in this town as opposed to next door at St. Andrews, 80 or 90% of all of the approvals that are given for new homes are 2 stories with massive structures facing to the street. It is really changing the character of our town. I'm sure it was done according to the code, but look at what's going on across the street from me at 3250. The whole feeling of Polo Drive and Lakeview coming down to Polo Drive has changed by this massive 2-story facade that I have to face for the rest of my life in Gulfstream. I don't know how you do it with the code. I appreciate your comments, Mayor Morgan, about 1-story homes, but other than the similarity of these two, which perhaps give you a hook to stop the two homes, how do you stop the massive two-story structures going up in our town, which is dramatically changing the feel of this lovely community?
Thank you. Yes,
Patsy Randolph. I think we all will agree that the Spence Properties new development with the oversized similar houses do not have the feel or look of the rest of Gulfstream. Now we're seeing oversized similar houses creeping into the core, or as I call it, the hood, of Gulfstream. As beautiful as these oversized houses may be, it's glaringly obvious that they don't fit into the character of our town. If this trend continues, we're going to be in trouble. And we're gonna start looking like Spence property, and that's not why I moved here. And I just hope that you will really spend some deep, well, actually, I would urge that the ARB and the commissioners, maybe, not put a moratorium, but slow down the process and really try to figure out how the accumulation of these houses are going to really impact our town. Because I think we're at a turning point, and I think it's some way we need to stop it, and so that we can have a clear, clean look at what is happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Chris O'Hare, with all respect to Ms. Randolph, she was on the ad hoc committee modifying the code. I didn't remember any time these issues ever came up then. And I don't remember any time anyone ever objected to Commissioner Orthwein's second floor. She has a two-story home, which happens to be identical to the house next door, just as Commissioner Stanley's house is identical to homes in the cottage district, and just as Commissioner White's home is very similar to homes across the street. Before I mention that, though, these gentlemen did not ask me to speak. They have no idea what I was going to say. I'm not affiliated with them. Please don't make them guilty by association. Mies van der Rohe said God's in the detail, but his Bauhaus architecture never had any details, so I guess he was a godless architect. The code is the reason we're having this discussion. The code says it must be compatible with a neighborhood. It also says it can't be too similar to other homes in the neighborhood, I guess. I don't remember that section. That leaves it to Mayor Morgan and the rest of you to decide what it is the code, what's the standard between those two extremes. And basically that's the target. Now Mr. Jones, who's much more articulate than me, I really envy that, and he's a great architect, obviously from all the examples of the work in town, I think did a great job. This is the result of thousands of decisions, little ones from, where's the bathroom going to be, to what am I going to look like when I drive into my house. All those decisions resulted in this arrow, if you will, trying to hit a target that he's not quite sure where that target is, because the code says it's up to you to decide between those extremes. That's tough. So what you're telling him is, that's not the target, there's another target, but we're not going to tell you where it is. Come back and try to hit that one. I don't think that's fair to him, especially given the similarities between the commission's homes, like I already pointed out. There's a lot of issues here, and I don't have standing because this is not my project, but if it were my project, I'd be concerned about my property rights, my freedom of expression, and even my speech. Now, all this happened because Tom Crocker built a house on the beach that shocked everybody. Because up till then, the commission respected the aesthetic decisions that property owners made. And the result of that was, up till the 80s, a beautiful town, beautiful gardens. But now, with Tom Crocker's little palace, which he doesn't own anymore, and I respect him, I think that's a great house. Now it's up to the commission to, I don't even know how to put it, to explain the vagaries of the code. Because people like Mr. Jones aren't quite sure
what it is they need to bring here to satisfy that code. That's just gonna lead to more litigation. I don't understand. Now, these people are very gentle and respectful and probably aren't gonna go there. But if it was me, I would. Yeah, we all know that because I think people should stand up for their rights. Now, there's one last point I want to make. If you decide that because of that place between compatibility with the neighborhood, but not too similar, wherever you decide that is, that now becomes the code. That means that other people like Commissioner Stanley, Commissioner Orthwarn, etc., are now going to have non-conforming homes because they're similar to their neighbor. So now by definition you've created a non-conforming house because you're saying similarity is too close. Your actions create criminality where it doesn't exist. I know you poo-poo at that, and I know because I'm disagreeing with the majority, I'm the outlier that you accused me of being before the legislature, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Appreciate your comment. Sincerely. Yes, sir.
Can I speak?
Yes.
I haven't been sworn in.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name.
I'm Bob Wibblesman. My wife Nancy spoke a minute before. Excuse me. She is a resident of Florida. I'm still a legal resident of California. We live in Brentwood, which is West Los Angeles. And the horse is out of the barn now. The Trike-Term Mansion has taken over. And although it's an upscale neighborhood, the quaint neighborhood of Brentwood has been changed by this. So we now are building two-story monsters right next to each other all over the place. It's changed the whole culture. Gulfstream is still in a nascent stage. And it seemed to me, having seen the, in effect, destruction of a neighborhood, I'd hate to see that happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
We follow?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the public. We do appreciate your comments and we do understand them. It's important to note that the majority of you have spoken about the potential McMansionism, if you will, a term that we thought we eliminated with the last recession, but it appears to be coming back. But you appear to be talking about potential future code changes that you would like to see to limit the scale, the size, and the mass of homes. But we are currently reviewing these applications under the current code. And your code is very stringent with regards to massing and setbacks and scale. You can only have a certain portion of your home on a second story. You need to have additional setbacks or architectural treatments on a second floor to help break down the mass. You also have a floor area ratio where you can't overbuild your lot or build too large. Now, we conform to all of those categories in the current code. The majority of these homes are one story. The small two-story portions are facing North Ocean for a grander facade. But if we go back to the roof plans, you'll notice over 75% of the home is a one-story home. We have setbacks that are consistent with the LDRs, and in some cases, those are even increased. And what you'll notice is, on both homes, we have additional setbacks on the second floor from the side elevations. Case in point, the rendering that's up on the screen. As you can see, the home pinches in on the sides to address massing and concerns to the neighbors. Some might call this a pop-up or a wedding cake effect, but it is an architectural treatment to reduce the massing and the scale. So we have taken all of your concerns into consideration with these designs that conform to the current code. For the gentleman on Oleander, we're sorry that you missed the ARPB meeting. Several of your neighbors from Oleander were there. The one gentleman that lived directly across the street was concerned about trees, and so we added additional trees for screening. But he was concerned about the two-story element that's shown in this rendering here on the back, and that was the same concern you had. We agreed to reduce the height of that structure by 2 feet, from Mr. Kent's suggestion. We also emphasized that that room, that retreat, is a guest room. It will be seldom used, will not be occupied all the time. And it has a step-out balcony over the garage for an architectural treatment on the facade. But I believe you mentioned you live across the street and to the south of this lot. Is that correct? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Across the street? West and to the south? Or directly west?
Directly west.
Okay, because we had up on the aerial, I'm going to bring the aerial back, and I'd like for you to point out the lot that you live in, because the person that was here at the ARPB said that they lived on this lot, which is directly west. Is this your house on the corner?
Yes.
Here, okay. So you're to the south and west of these two properties. Now, this corner here is where the two-story element is.
Right.
And the balcony is facing west. To the gentleman who actually lives to the west that came to the ARPB, that we provided several additional trees for him for screening, you live what's called to the south and west, to the corner. Okay, not directly west. So when we look at this rendering, we look at the elevation that appears to the south and west, which faces you. And if I go through and show you what's going to face your property, not the balcony, but this facade here, see this? There's no windows on that elevation. That's a decorative shutter that has no window behind it, just for an architectural feature. So the portion of the home, again, very important, let me go back to the aerial. The portion of the home that faces your lot over here, this is your lot to the south and west, and the corner garage that's over here to the northeast, the south-facing wall is a solid wall on the second floor and does not have any visibility to your property. And so there will be nobody looking over your property, because your property is to the south of these lots.
Well, you use the terms north and
Mr. Mayor,
south.
this is rebuttal.
And no one.
Rewind.
Those are broad terms. There's only a few
I think
feet
it's
here.
important.
Okay.
I will allow
Yeah.
it to continue.
Well, I just wanted to point that out to the commission.
Well, but I don't
because
think it's accurate.
Well, I'd like to point it out to the commission because the gentleman that does live directly to the west was here, and we gave him some additional screening.
But
Thank
your
you.
comments just aren't accurate.
Sir,
Mr. White.
I respect your position and I agree.
Yeah, let's, Mr. Ladonna, you can speak, and then instead of having colloquy back and forth, we'll have one person speak, then the
Oh,
other
I'm
can
sorry,
speak.
but just
I
to address
understand.
that.
That's fine.
I don't want to offend the gentleman, it's an interpretation, southwest versus west. I can understand and appreciate his concern. I think that what Rich was trying to point out was that elevation should not have any significant effect on the privacy of this gentleman's home. We do our best to try to accommodate the neighborhood as much as we can. We meet with the neighbors, we've met with neighbors out there. The one before ARPB, we've made adjustments to these plans. The one thing I take exception to, and I understand, people really value this community and they love to be here, and it's a great place to live. We're not making mansions. These are 4,500 square foot houses on 16,500 and 17,500 square foot lots. Rich's point is well taken. The majority of the space is on the first floor. With that being said, I don't want to belabor the point because we're taking up a lot of everyone's time, including yours today. I'm anxious to hear what Mr. Stanley referred to as, if it's appropriate to ask, as some things that might be considered that might be helpful. Certainly your input at this point in time, if that's appropriate, I'd like to hear what you suggested, if that's possible. Is that appropriate to ask that question? Sure.
Well, the mayor's comments and with regard to the code, which, is a broad thing about the 250 feet in like homes. Basically you've got 4 or 5 styles in Gulfstream and a couple combinations. You've got Mediterranean Revival, Gulfstream Bermuda, Georgian Bermuda, and then introduction of some Cape Dutch and Georgian, and then you've got I guess we would call this is more of a British West Indies vernacular flavor, which is the house with the clapboard siding, which is the stucco. The two things that stand out to me, the neighbors on Oleander probably, but for the comments on the two-story garage, which we just talked about again, will probably prefer to have the massing, under the current code towards A1A. I think that seems relatively obvious, although, courtyards and whatnot notwithstanding. The two things that stand out to me, well, one is if you're driving down A1A through Gulfstream, you're going to see these things. Okay, you're entering the town, here you come, you're looking at houses on the left, you're looking at these on the right, they're going to look new. I guess my question or my comment is we've got two hammerhead driveways, for lack of a better term, motor court's probably a more accurate term. Two similar motor courts in the front, which are exactly the same. There are some different driveways and whatnot on A1A. Some are similar. We have a lot of larger homes on larger lots, which you don't have here, that the driveways go all the way down back to a garage, and you're familiar with all that. That would be one thing. Unfortunately, with the curb cuts on North Ocean and all of that, whether you can change the shape with the limited amount of space you have would be one comment. The other comment would be, I think, the more pertinent one is you've got, I like the house in front of the Spence property on the beach access easement. It's big, it's nice, I've seen it from both sides. You've got your front facade is somewhat similar. My one comment on the facade of the British West Indies vernacular, and I know Mr. Jones said it touches on the modern a little bit, is there was a house that's similar. I hate to use names, but there's a famous designer who's young in Palm Beach who just built the house in some Architectural Digest magazine, which will all remain nameless for the record, but it looks similar. I kind of like that style. It's a little different. It works. I would suggest you try to make that home look older. Maybe lose the modern railing, although you're trying to make it look a little different. It's, you're like, well, commission's saying do this, do that. It's different, it's not different, make it more modern, now make it older, now it's going to look the same, I get it. That would be my one suggestion on that. That would be the one that I would leave. It's different. I technically, and again, these are subjective more than objective, make it look older. And make it look more like it fits, like it's something somebody built in 1968 under a really old code, like Mr. O'Hare said was nice before 1980. And then on the Bermuda, which is really just the standard Bermuda, the change would be, what are you doing with the front entry? Are you you make it more singular or make it different? I don't think, by and large, we're in a position to manipulate the square footage and the this and the that a whole lot under the current code, but those would be my two or three central comments without losing square footage and or asking for a total redesign, which I'm unsure that you would be willing to do anyway. I'm certain probably without constant debate you're not going to go from 2 stories to 1 story on one of the homes, but those would be my there's other people up here who have comments, but those would be my initial probably 3 comments on it.
Mr. Stanley, just for the point of clarification for my benefit, I really appreciate your input. On the subject of the railings on the British West Indies design,
right,
and try and make that look older, I think we can easily accomplish that.
Right, I mean they're linear, a little more modern.
Going more to the Chippendale type look, we can accomplish that, I think, pretty easily. And I'd be more than willing to do that. You mentioned, and I agree with you, with the massing, what we've tried to accomplish, getting back to Mr. Morgan's previous comments, what we've tried to accomplish was the massing being on North Ocean Boulevard, obviously. If you look at the elevation there presently, of what exists there presently, you're looking right through as you drive down North Ocean Boulevard at a swimming pool in the back of a house with very little vegetation, and it's exposed. It's not very attractive at all. And I think that what we're proposing is putting the massing onto North Ocean Boulevard being somewhat compatible with the property to the east, although it's on the ocean. You've got 2-story massing in that location. So I agree with you in that respect. I didn't understand, quite honestly, and I need you to clarify for me, please. You mentioned the driveway, and I don't, on one of the houses, I didn't know what you meant by that.
Well, they're both the same. I mean, you've got
Yeah, they're both
basically a
courtyards.
drive-in motor court. I mean, I don't. again,
One's
with-
symmetrical, one's a center drive.
Yeah. I mean,
Here, you
they're-
see the front door,
Right.
again with the flanking palms, and you see more of the central front. One, when you drive in, you drive off to the side.
I mean, you're limited.
And the
Yeah, I
landscaping.
mean, you're
and showing
limited.
the cars cover that facade.
It's hard for me to conceptualize when you're driving. I mean, obviously, I think my frame of reference is larger lots, you know, where you have.
So you're
a little more,
saying,
but you can't do
you're
that.
saying to try to make one of the driveways look substantially different than the other one?
Yeah,
rather than
that's
tell the
just
two
a comment. I know,
roadways.
I understand your
That's well
entry from
taken.
A1A is maybe different, like one's in the middle of the lot and one's further to the north. I get all that.
I think we can shift the curb cuts, I don't think that'll be a problem to do that.
I
one.
mean, I don't,
That's point well taken.
again, that's a more direct comment than we don't like it, figure it out, you know, for lack of a better.
Well, Mr.
better comment.
Ladani, would you consider a single-story home on one of those lots? There are a number of relatively new ones within the last 10 years on Polo and Gulfstream Road.
Yeah, I would rather not. I would rather not.
Why not?
Because I think that the majority of one of these houses is single story. There's 75% of spaces on the first floor. If you take a look at the roof lines of these houses,
I mean, get away from the courtyard. Just a single-story home like we have on Polo and on Gulfstream on that lot. It's a small lot.
Look at, before I answer that question, look at the roof lines. Look at the roof line. Look at the majority of this house is single story.
If it was one story, it would probably still be a courtyard, because we're gonna have the garage on Oleander. So we'd probably still end up with a courtyard. We'd probably fill in that gap with the other bedrooms and still have a courtyard. So
I don't
think we
understand,
get
I don't
away from
understand how the
courtyard.
courtyard is affecting the
I
character.
think the courtyard is driving your homes.
No,
You
but
build a lot.
I don't know how it's affecting the character and the integrity of the neighborhood. I think it's, if anything,
It's-
it's a lifestyle thing in terms of the way people like to be able to exit onto the yard and the patio.
Maybe Mr. Jones is correct, no architect by any stretch. It just seems to me that for 75 years, they've been building very nice single-story homes here on these small lots. I don't know why you couldn't build a very nice-looking one there. And I'm not sure, since profit is not the main reason that you want to put it there, instead you want to maintain integrity of your
You know
neighborhood. Why
something,
wouldn't you want to do that?
it's really not a profit issue. I mean, if you take a look at the incremental reduction in square footage and the incremental reduction in profitability, I'm not comfortable, I don't usually have conversations about profitability in these houses. Sometimes you'd be surprised at how little the profitability is.
It's about lifestyle too.
It's about marketability too. It's about marketability, it's about lifestyle. Some people like to have their guest bedrooms on the second floor. When the guests come, we're in an area where people live down here in the wintertime. They have a lot of their family come in.
And we have more young families moving into Gulfstream. With children, you're usually upstairs, and the master is downstairs.
So that's really the driving issue, Mr. Morgan, is not standpoint of profitability, it's standpoint of, quite honestly, saleability. And, you know, we have to design things and try to cater, you know, when I meet with my designers and my decorators and we go to pick out things, I have to, when the houses aren't sold, we have to use our best ability to try to determine what will attract
Of course.
the majority of
I
buyers.
can assure you,
And the same
a
thing.
new
with-
home in Gulfstream sells very quickly, whether it's 2 stories, 1 story,
Well,
courtyard, or
because,
any
you
other.
know, there's very limited available inventory. We're fortunate to own some nice pieces of property, and I want them to come out nice, and I want them to be sold. But
Can I say something? Is it possible to do a circular driveway on one and make some changes to make them a little bit more different? I mean,
Yeah.
do you have coins on one that's kind of an older look? You're kind of, there's,
Coin is Georgian more.
yeah.
Coins,
It's
coin
an
is
older
Georgian,
look. It's
coin's
very
Georgian, but it
much part of
also
Gulfstream.
could be incorporated into Gulfstream Bermuda style as well.
Yeah.
The coins could go on the Bermuda style house. It wouldn't be conducive to the colonial West Indies. We would love to do a circular drive, but I believe there's some limitations with DOT and the location of some of the Australian pines.
Because that would give a whole different look
We
to
can-
how
what we can do-
landscaping and a circular driveway.
What we can do, Mrs. Orthwine, is we can, at Mr. Stanley's suggestion, we can make a fairly significant variation in the two driveway designs and
approaches to the front door of houses so that we can make them look less similar. And we can change the railing designs and make the British West Indies house, I think that was an excellent idea, make it look more,
Old world.
old world. You know, I do have, the only thing I'm trying, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I've always tried to cooperate with this board, I think we all, you know, at least I feel that way.